Hello and welcome into the Fantasy Life Show. I'm your host for today, Thor Nystrom. I am joined by my good friend Ray Garvin of Bleacher Report because today we have a very special episode. We're going to be talking overrated and underrated NFL draft prospects for the offensive skill positions. Ray, are you ready to do this?
Thor, anytime you come calling to talk NFL draft prospects and the offensive side of the ball, you know I'm going to answer the phone, and I am excited as all outdoors to talk about this class, these prospects, baby. This is going to be a good one. Let's get it.
Yeah, I had to put out the bat signal because Ray Garvin goes about as deep as anyone. And this is a deep concept, especially for, we're in the middle of February right now, trying to parse out the most overrated and underrated prospects against, we had to have a control here. So we had something to respond to. We are using the consensus draft big board of a website called jacklick10.com. It has a good big board. It has all the updated big boards on there. So we get the consensus ranking, and Ray and I are going to go through quarterbacks, running backs, wide receiver, tight end, tell you who we think is the most overrated and underrated with our rankings in comparison to that consensus big board. So Ray, let's kick this thing right off with the quarterbacks. I suppose that we'll start with the overrated. Tell me about who you think is the most overrated prospect currently on the consensus big board at quarterback.
Yeah, right now, right now, this is the player that is listed as QB4 in the 2025 draft class. University of Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers. He is overrated. I'm not here to bash on any college kid and their NFL future dreams, but we're just talking about where they're ranked, their play, and their projected outcome at the next level. And Quinn Ewers is not the QB4 in this class. Yes, we may have thought this could have been one of the quarterbacks to contend for QB1 at the start of the college football season. But Thor, as we progress through the year, we watch him through the college football playoffs, it is unequivocally, he is not a top 5 quarterback in this class. This is a quarterback that I thought probably needed another year of development in the collegiate game, but I completely understand why he said, I'm tired of it. I don't want the pressure. Let me just get out of college football and go to the NFL. But to see him right now still ranked on some people's boards is not just a first-round quarterback. I've seen him top 50 across some spots. Some people still put him inside of the first round, high second-round pick. Quinn Ewers is not a top 4 quarterback in this class. He's not a top 5 quarterback in this class. He's got some talent. He's got some traits and tools, but this is a guy that I think is severely overrated according to this consensus big board.
Amen. And well said. Quinn Ewers, he's number 7 in my rankings amongst the quarterbacks. My debate with myself is not whether I have him too low. It's whether I have him too high. Right. I mean, I do not see Quinn Ewers being ranked higher for me, once we get to the end of April. My comp on him, Ray, was Kenny Pickett. I think it's a guy that runs your system for you, and that's about it, right? Like the initial couple reads. My issue with Quinn Ewers, he showed that he had a mastery over Steve Sarkisian's system. The first couple reads, right? Like he does a good job with the timing of the thing when the concept is there. He'll get the ball out on time. If it's the first couple reads, somebody's open. The issue is when he has to go down the progression line and you have to start deviating away from the script that Steve Sarkisian has handed to you. That's where I started to see issues with Quinn Ewers, especially when pressure was bearing down on him. The Georgia regular season game is obviously the best example of this, where he got sacked a billion times and he kept turning the ball over, was briefly benched for Arch Manning. But it is indicative, I think, of sort of the poison pill of the evaluation there. Can he improve that and sort of access the rest of his tools like you're mentioning? What I like about him is throwing intermediate on time on the script. But again, outside of that, we have some issues. Ray, quickly, where did you have Ewers in your rankings?
Yeah, I've got Quinn Ewers as QB9 in my rankings right now. And one of the things that I really focus in on, Thor, is completion percentage over expected. Are they doing more than their offense expects them to do? He's the only QB inside of this top 10, and we'll talk about some other names, negative CPOE, negative 0.3 completion percentage over expected, worse than Jalen Milroe, worse than just about every other quarterback in this class.
Quinn Ewers should have gone back to school. Now, he wasn't going to be starting at Texas next year. That's, I think, why this happened. Texas informed him that they were going forward with Arch Manning, which that makes sense. If I was Quinn Ewers, I would have taken the NIL bag. I think he's potentially going to be taking a pay cut year one at the NFL. You know, it was a guy who averaged $2 million in NIL the last 3 years at Texas. I don't know if his year one money is going to match that, because I think he's going to go on day 3. Ray, my overrated quarterback against the consensus board, I was surprised to see Riley Leonard listed at 6th. This seems like another vestige from, you know, heading into the last season, just like we have with Quinn Ewers, where not everyone has gotten there, perhaps watched all the film from 2024. With Riley Leonard, I have him my quarterback 11. He's a good athlete. I like him the short game, and I trust him out intermediate level. He can't throw downfield at all. You literally cannot have him throw 20 plus yards downfield in the middle of the field, where people can come and start picking the thing off and defending balls. The only deep shots that he can take, it's one-on-one down the sidelines, and the effectiveness wavers with that. He's a leader. People like him in the locker room. His coaches love him. His teammates love him. I like the running aspect he gives you. And like I said, he can do this short putt type passing stuff. I do not think this guy has enough throwing talent to cleanly project as a backup quarterback in the NFL, a QB2. He's got a shot, but he's going to have to prove that he has that arm talent in order to be a long-term QB2. And if not that, what is he? This is a guy for me that is closer to on the draftable, undraftable line than he is, you know, is this a day 2 or a day 3 sort of a thing, like this ranking is indicating on the consensus board. Are you with me on Leonard, Ray?
Thor, you must watch tape. You must grind the film. You must watch some tape, because you nailed Riley Leonard. When we just talked about Quinn Ewers and how overrated he was. Quinn Ewers' chunk play rate, 15 plus yards down the field, pass attempts, his explosive play rate, 30 yards plus down the field, significantly higher than that of Riley Leonard. You're talking about a quarterback that does not want to push the ball downfield. Thor, I think you're being a little nice that I don't think he's very good in the intermediate area. This is a quarterback that is going to be very scheme specific with his landing spot. And at the best case, Thor Nystrom, I can see him potentially working out as like a Bo Nix backup in Denver that you never need him to play. But if you needed a spot start out of him for a week, he can get in there, complete a few short passes, and run the hell out of the ball. I'm with you. I've got Riley Leonard at QB 10. Good locker room guy. Love the experience. National championship contender, but not an elite quarterback prospect in this class at all.
And speaking of the Denver Broncos, my comp for Riley Leonard, Ray, right-handed Tim Tebow.
I don't know if that's good or bad, Thor. I don't know if that's good or bad, but there you go.
There we go. Let's move. We just threw some cold water on a couple prospects. Let's go the other way and give some flowers. Ray, let's do our underrated quarterbacks, starting with your most underrated quarterback.
Listen, he's starting to get some buzz right now. He's starting to get some buzz in the draft space. He already came out and said, I'm going to the combine next week, Thor, to compete. I'm talking about Louisville quarterback Tyler Shough. And this is an older quarterback prospect, but he's built. He's put together, and we got a chance to see him down in Mobile a few weeks ago. The arm talent is there. You're going to look at this Louisville team, and people are going to point to the wins and the losses. This team was a middle-of-the-road team in college football at best. When I look at some of the efficiency numbers from Tyler Shough, the arm talent, this kid, 20.9% chunk rate, so 15-plus yards down the field. His explosive play rate, 7.1%, 30-plus yard pass attempts down the field, completing those. That is better than Riley Leonard. That is better than Quinn Ewers, and it is right on par with Jalen Milroe from Alabama. I don't believe that Shough gets drafted in the first round, but you talked about somebody that can be a developmental backup. I look at where Kellen Mond got drafted a few years ago, top of the 3rd round, Davis Mills at the back of the 2nd round for the Houston Texans. I can absolutely see a world where Tyler Shough gets day 2 capital as a developmental quarterback prospect. And for us in fantasy, you've got to keep your eye on those guys. Look at how many quarterbacks play each and every year. If you can push the ball downfield, if you can deliver that far hash to sideline throw, which I've seen Tyler Shough do, you've got a chance to get on the field, complete some passes. And for us in fantasy, we're just looking for the spot start. I like Tyler Shough, and I do think that after the combine, you probably still can see him to climb up the boards a little bit.
Yeah, and he was he 11 on the consensus big board? He's way down
Yeah,
there.
yes, he's way down there, 11 or 12. Yeah.
Yeah, Tyler Shough, 6'5", 224 pounds, former high 4-star recruit, and he was looked at as the heir apparent to Justin Herbert at Oregon. His career got a little bit wonky after he took over the starting job in the COVID season for Herbert. He had a good first 3 games, and then he had a couple bad games, and they pulled the plug on him so fast. And Anthony Brown was the guy that they inserted, the Boston College transfer. Then Shough goes along his way to Texas Tech. He was supposed to be Jordan Love for Matt Wells, their new head coach. He was like, that dude, is going to be my Jordan Love here at Texas Tech. And it did not work out there. It was one season-ending injury after another. The 3 years he was there, it was major injuries every year. Never came together for him. Then his 7th year on campus, this is his 7th-year senior, he transfers to Louisville, plays for Jeff Brom, and it all coalesced. 88.5 PFF grade last year, 88.6 PFF passing grade, clean pocket 92.8, the very high throwing grade, the accuracy. Ray, he has the frame, he has the athleticism, he has the arm. My concern with him is you didn't break out till your 7th year. There's contextual things in there, but the contextual things lead to my other concern, which is the durability thing. Shough will be interesting for the medical staffs to poke around on. Got to have the clean bill of health, but you have that potential there, and a guy who showed it on the field last year. By the way, for a coach who has sent numerous quarterbacks to the NFL already, Jeff Brom is a super underrated quarterback whisperer. Tyler Shough absolutely deserves to go in the middle rounds, and we'll end up seeing where he finishes with that. But I'm with you on all that, Ray. Ray, where's Shough in your rankings?
Yeah, I have him right now as QB8 in the class right now, so ahead of Quinn Ewers, ahead of Riley Leonard, and I get it. 7th year, medicals have to check out. It just seems like we're entering this NFL space store, this NFL world, where experience, it feels like no matter how the collegiate prospect got it, it matters. And what I think he'll be able to do is at least pick up and comprehend what's going on in an NFL locker room early on. This is a player, once again, I am not projecting to be an elite quarterback. But when you're talking about the tools and the traits, I think he can be that developmental guy for a team.
Yeah, and to Ray's point, over those 7 years, he not only did he play at 3 different schools, he played in 3 vastly different kinds of offenses, right? And they were all in the Power 5-4. Once he was at Oregon to start out, and RIP to the Pac-12. But he's been all over the place. He can run a system for sure. Definitely has the physical ability. Ray, and by the way, I was right around where you are on Shough, but certainly quarterback 11 is way too low. My underrated quarterback, Kyle McCord of Syracuse, so on this consensus board is QB7. I think people are sleeping on Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord last year finished 3rd in the nation in PFF's wins above replacement. Number 1, and then was also number 1 in big time throws and a whole bunch. He was also number 1 in turnover worthy play rate. He had to play a little bit of a hero ball, but the attacking nature of Kyle McCord within the pocket is what I like. That guy sees the field well. He has a lot of gumption, and he will attack you. Before he was at Ohio State, and he famously was pushed out so that they could sign Will Howard or whatever. He had a lot of talent around him. At Syracuse, that was not the case, right? The offensive line wasn't very good. He had a couple decent receiving options, especially when they sent LaQuinn Allen out. But, it was a lot of time you were getting into these shootouts, and Syracuse was viable in them and really good in Fran Brown's first year because of Kyle McCord. I think he's accurate. I think he's tough. He sees the field well. Ray, I struggled with the comp here because I got between 2 guys, and I was like, do I want to go with the high one? Do I want to go with the sort of medium one? But the 2 I was on was Chad Henne, and then the higher one, if he gets his bonanza developmental outcome, I think Kyle McCord is going to be the pointing Spider-Man gif of Kirk Cousins.
I like it. I want to know where you have him ranked, because I might be a little too high on Kyle McCord. Where do you have him at?
I have him QB5.
I got him QB5 too. I've got him QB5 right now in my ranks. EPA per pass attempt this past season, 0.24, higher than Tyler Shough, higher than Quinn Ewers. I mean, this kid can throw the ball. And yes, there are some turnover-worthy plays. He's got to clean some of that stuff up. But you know what I want out of my quarterback, Thor? is fearlessness. I don't want you afraid to push the ball downfield. I want everybody to remember this QB, and I'm not comparing the two, but Desmond Ridder was terrified to throw the ball downfield, and it shows. NFL defenses feast on that early and often. I can work on his decision-making. Hey, take the first read. If the second read isn't there, throw it out of bounds, tuck it and run. I can coach some of that out of you. I can't coach that thing that's in the air. That's that dog. Push the ball downfield, and McCord can do that. This was a 5-star recruit. This isn't a scrub that just went to Syracuse. This is a highly touted quarterback prospect that got his opportunity. I've got him at QB5 as well.
Yeah, well said, Ray. And it was like McCord was freed from the Ohio State thing where he had to follow the script as written. He didn't get the freedom, but once he went to Syracuse, it was almost like the shackles came off him and he was free to hunt down the field and just had the tremendous season. Ray, we're going to talk about running backs and then get to receivers and tight ends here in a second. But first, we wanted to hear from our friends at Bud Light.
Hey, you know you're not actually allowed to drink in a beer commercial?
Since when?
You gotta wait till it's done. Oh,
5,
4, 3, 2, 1.
I always get a kick out of that one. Ray, let's head to the running backs and start with overrated. Your overrated running back is?
Do not crush me, comments, viewers.
They're going to crush you, Ray.
They're going to get – it's fine. I'm standing 10 toes down on this one.
Okay.
I like this player, but there is no way, shape, or form that Cam Skattebo out of Arizona State is the RB6. I refuse to believe that. Let's start with the pros. He is incredible at making defenders miss with his physicality. His broken tackle percentage right up there with Ashton Jeanty, legitimately. 49.6% for Ashton Jeanty, the consensus RB1. Cam Skattebo, 49.6%. These are both two really good running backs at making people miss in space, especially when they're contacted. His chunk plays, like he does not have that second gear, in my opinion, to hit those home run plays, and I get it. You don't need your running back to do that every single time they touch the ball. I believe Cam Skattebo is a bit undersized at the running back spot. So when you're thinking about this big physical tackle breaker, I don't want my big physical tackle breaker 5'7", 5'8", 210, 215 pounds. I want them to be a bigger type of back. So when I'm looking at the archetype of Cam Skattebo, I'm truly trying to find how does he succeed at the next level? Because I don't picture him or profile him as a 1A in an offense out the gap. He's not going to get the type of capital to get that type of opportunity right away. He feels like he best is a complement in an offense with a proper bell cow, or at least a traditional back that you can run the ball 15 plus times up the A, B, and C gap and utilize Cam Skattebo in space. Thor, I always say this. There's a difference between running backs who can catch passes and running backs who can be deployed as a pass-catching weapon. I do believe that Cam Skattebo has the ability to be deployed as a pass-catching weapon, but I don't think he's a true number one running back in this class. I think he lacks some of that wiggle. I don't believe he's got that prototypical size to handle that workload. So for me, to see him at RB6, I need a guy that I feel can step into any one of the 32 teams that need a back and play right out the gate, and I don't believe that's Skattebo.
I'm hoping that my colleague Kendall isn't watching right now, the Arizona State grad and the world's biggest Cam Skattebo fan.
Don't kill me, Kendall.
I'm at RB6, I'm a little bit lower than that. I'm at RB8, so not like crazy off, but a little bit. And Ray, I love the point you brought up about Cam Skattebo's frame in conjunction with the game he's going to have to play in the NFL, right? He's not going to become an athletic demon overnight, right? He's not going to become like a speedster burner. He needs to win the same way he did at Arizona State with the tackle break-in stuff and this sort of a thing. The guy that I see a little bit in him is David Montgomery, the way that they play. But the thing is, David Montgomery was over 5'10". He was 222 pounds coming into the league. He's played bigger than that. And then the 4.63 speed probably is around where Skattebo is going to be. Skattebo better get over his vertical jump. David Montgomery actually had a 1% vertical jump. He was in the first percentile, 28.5. Ray, you and I might be able to get over 28.5. But the whole point being that whole tackle breaking thing, Montgomery had the frame for it, and Skattebo a little bit smaller. Can he add weight? I don't know that he can. He's 5'7". Right, like how much can you get up to 220? You know, I'm not really sure, but I think I'm more or less with you on that. That you know he's just a little bit too high on there. Mine rate is Kaleb Mullings, the running back from Michigan, who is RB11 on the consensus board rankings. I have Kaleb Mullings way lower on my board. Kaleb Mullings, the things he has going for him, he doesn't have a lot of wear on the tires. He was a linebacker prior to the past 2 seasons. Then he converted over. And then the first season, 2023, he was on the championship team. He was sort of buried on the bench, didn't have a ton of usage. Last season, he ended up overtaking Donovan Edwards, but Donovan Edwards was still heavily used as a rotational back. So at least you have that. He didn't get nicked up a lot in college. And I also like the hammer back stuff. He's the no-nonsense hammer. It's what he is. The sledgehammer. It's just, we're going to give you the ball, you're going between the tackles, and you're going to, street fight people. All that stuff is great. However, the guy can't get outside. He certainly lacks long speed. I mean, this is a short yardage profile, and he doesn't do anything on passing downs. And when I say, I mean literally, they didn't put him out on passing downs the last 2 years since he has been a running back. So it's like you can't expect any utility on your passing downs. He's a big back anyway. I'm not sure a profile that way anyway. And then your game is limited to the thing in the NFL that is the cheapest to find, which is between the tackles running. I think he is way, way, way too high. Kaleb Mullings. Any thoughts there, Ray?
I legitimately thought this was a joke in the show notes. I thought the producers were playing with us because I'm trying to understand a world in which Kaleb Mullings is anybody's RB11. Again, we're not here to rip on these collegiate kids, but come on. There's no way. If Cam Skattebo is Thor Nystrom's RB8, I have him currently at RB10. I got to readjust that ranking because there's no way Kaleb Mullings is almost as good as Cam Skattebo. I got to put Skattebo at 1 now. I agree with you, Thor. This is a very easy position. His game is something you can find. And I don't want to be dismissive, but you can find the plodding thumper bruiser to take some carries in the NFL off the street. You can go find a retired back and get them to come out there and do that. I'm with you. I think RB11 is just far too high for this running back.
Yeah, and in this crazy stack class, this is a guy you could potentially get. I think I don't see him going higher in the 6th round. I don't know how he could with how stacked this class is. So it's going to be either 6th or 7th round. I do think he gets drafted. I think the guy who is in jeopardy of not getting drafted is his famous teammate Donovan Edwards, who was on the cover of the college football game and all this stuff. Man. I do think Mullings has to get into a situation where he is platooning with an airback, and he is just sort of the short yardage guy. And there are teams that need that. My Minnesota Vikings, they couldn't run around the goal line last year. They had a bad interior offensive line. They don't have any of the hammerbacks like Kaleb Mullings. But again, you're talking 6th, 7th round, way, way overrated. But Ray, let's hop into the underrated running backs now. Who is your biggest underrated running back against the consensus board?
Thor, I mean, I'm looking at some of the advanced numbers on this running back, and I'm double checking because I'm like, wait a minute, that's not better than Jeanty. Wait a minute, that can't be better than Kaleb Johnson. Wait a minute, this cannot be. This is a player who had his lowest rushing attempts of his career after having 2 stellar years at Oregon State. We're going to Miami. Hold up them U's. Yeah. I want Damian Martinez, currently RB 16.
If on the consensus board. Yeah.
Thor, this one right here is asinine.
Disrespectful. Yeah.
This is beyond disrespectful. Let me hit you with some data for all the people out there that like some data. Damian Martinez, EPA per rush in 2024, 0.29. Ashton Jeanty, 0.22. Cam Skattebo, 0.16. When you're talking about success rate, Ashton Jeanty, 55.2% success rate this season. Damian Martinez, 63.7% success rate. 3 straight years of over 6 yards per rush attempt. Again, only 159 carries. Maybe you can explain to me why Cristobal didn't run the ball more with Damian Martinez, but with minimal usage, still over 1,000 yards, 200 yards receiving. He's 6 foot, over 200. I mean, this dude, Thor, he is a top 10 running back in this class. I think when you're talking about a player that you look up in training camp, and remember a couple of years ago when we heard that buzz coming out of Houston that Florida running back might start, Dameon Pierce might start, the fourth round Dameon Pierce, and then he started and had a very successful rookie season. I think Damian Martinez can not only do that, but truly solidify himself as that team's priority running back. RB16 is out of this world. Martinez needs to be much, much higher than this.
I love all that, Ray. That it was really well said. Martinez, I think people misunderstand Martinez because he was listed at 241 at Oregon State, and then he was listed last year at Miami as like 235 or 6 or something like that. And he was one of the funnest guys I talked to in Mobile when you're done there at the Senior Bowl, because I asked him about that because I was setting a question up to him of like, you dropped from the little over 240 into the 230s for Miami system. Did you do that because you were going from the physical downhill running style that they use at Oregon State, the physical thing, to the air raid offense that Shannon Dawson ran at Miami against thinner boxes? And he started laughing and he goes, dude, I've never played a game over 230 pounds. And I was like, you've never been listed under 230 pounds. And he just sort of smiled at me. Like the schools exaggerate that stuff. But like he gives you the inside the tackles. Everybody thought he was a 240-pound hammer because of how well he does between the tackles. But the thing that people don't get about him is how good his feet are. Right? I mean, he can change the angle on someone, the tackle radius angle right before they launch off their feet. He can make people miss with the violent one cut. I really like how fluid he is. Now you see me, now you don't. And then he can also just go right at you and run you over. So he provides a little bit of a puzzle because sometimes defenders coming down on him, they think it's going to be a battering ram type of a contest. Then Damian Martinez will switch things up and do some footwork on him and evade. And then you get the opposite where they're sort of breaking down which way is he going to go. And he runs right through him. I'm a big fan of Damian Martinez, and I think he'd be getting more hype, Ray, if they had used him more at Miami last year, to your point. Obviously they were very pass happy with Mr. Cam Ward. And then they also had this deeper running back rotation than I thought. He was ceding carries to backs that I did not think that he should have ceded carries to. But regardless, you and I are in lockstep on Damian Martinez. Mine, Ray, my most underrated. Now, it's not by a ton. This guy is RB4 on the consensus board of the media, but on my board, he is RB2 with a bullet, and I couldn't turn down the opportunity to talk about this guy. He's my boy, Kaleb Johnson from Iowa. Ray, do you remember Larry Johnson from Penn State back in the day?
I do remember Larry Johnson. I remember him quite well.
Yeah, I see a lot of Larry Johnson in Kaleb Johnson. Now, you also see disparate elements of other people's games too. The wide zone stuff, the outside zone stuff that Iowa has run ubiquitously. He looks a bit like Le'Veon Bell. Kaleb Johnson is in the exact same physical package as Le'Veon Bell. He has that yeoman's patience when he is picking down the line, but then he also has the punch the gas and he just shoots out. He has that acceleration thing. So wait. He has very good feel for it. He also does a really good job of forcing the linebacker. I always love on the tape when you see the dudes always manipulating the linebackers. It's something Ashton Jeanty does. It's something that Kaleb Johnson does, where he forces the linebackers to declare their gaps first, and then he's like, see ya. He just gets them stuck in a muck of humanity. Kaleb Johnson, the speed is crazy underrated. There's been all these aspersions towards his speed that he's going to dispel in about 10 days here. But I see on Twitter people being like, oh, he's going to run in the 4.6s, probably just because of his size. And then I think maybe the way that he runs, he is extremely angular. It's like a sprinter. He's totally upright. And then he barely moves his arms. And the legs are very close together. So it doesn't look like much movement. He outruns defensive backs consistently to the end zone. He did at Iowa. He also erased angles. And not only that, Iowa's GPS had him at 22 miles per hour. That is flying, especially for a big back. Kaleb Johnson's going to run in the 4.4s. He's going to blow people's socks off with how well he runs. I love the feel, Ray, here. I like the power element with him. It's very difficult to tackle him. I compare it to a light pole that is caked in grease. He's slippery, but he also has the power element to him. He has the speed, of course. I'm a big fan of Kaleb Johnson. Are you with me on Kaleb Johnson?
When I saw this on the show sheet, again, I thought it was a joke as him being underrated, but RB4, that's too low. I've got him as RB2. I made that proclamation yesterday. He is my RB2 in this class. And I'm going to just give you some things that 1,000% back what you just said. Kaleb Johnson's percent of rush attempts resulting in a gain of 15-plus yards, 13.1%. That is higher than Omarion Hampton's 9.6, higher than Ashton Jeanty's 10.6, higher than Cam Skattebo's 8.9. This dude, Thor, I think I think he's going to crack sub 4.45. I think there's an outside chance that he lines up in Indianapolis and he's like a 4.40. The breakaway speed that he possesses at his size, it is. I went back and watched again every touchdown from 2024, and at least 7 or 8 of them are 20-plus yard runs. This kid's usage compared to some of these other backs, his stuff rate's higher because he was utilized more in Iowa's offense than any of these other backs were used in their offense, including Ashton Jeanty. You talked about Larry Johnson, Le'Veon Bell. And for those that don't remember Le'Veon Bell coming out of Michigan State, he was not the Le'Veon Bell that we remember in fantasy football in Pittsburgh. He reinvented his game. He reminds me, Kaleb Johnson, of DeMarco Murray. I can definitely see the Larry Johnson comps as well, that linear, upright running style. He's not gonna make ESPN breaking you down like LaShawn McCoy. That's not his game, but he's got a lethal stiff arm, incredible breakaway speed, and his contact balance after he's hit and met by defenders is outstanding. RB2 in this class, we are in lockstep, my friend. He is incredible.
I absolutely love to hear it. And we're also going to be, as we move to wide receivers, in lockstep on your most overrated wide receiver, unfortunately, on the other side. We're in lockstep here, Ray. Tell people who your most overrated wide receiver is against the consensus board.
You know, it's tough when you get these names that have been in the draft space and circles for some years and the expectations are very high, and none may be higher. And it all works together, right? Quinn Ewers a little overrated. His potential wide receiver 1, Isaiah Bond, as well. Overrated. Isaiah Bond is wide receiver 5. Thor, I don't. I mean, what do y'all want me to say? No.
No.
He wasn't the best. He wasn't the best pass catcher on his own team, and I would argue Gunnar Helm was a more consistent pass catcher than Isaiah Bond. So I'm putting him as the 3rd most reliable pass catcher in that offense. And a lot of people are going to point towards the end of the season where he ran, I believe it was a deep dig route, jumps up, tries to catch a ball, clanks off his hands. He's got speed. He's got tremendous speed, but these comps that are floated out there to Jalen Waddle, it's a disrespect to Jalen Waddle. And it's unfair to put those type of expectations on the University of Texas's 2nd or 3rd best pass catcher in that offense. Another player that I thought would have done himself a good service going back to school to refine his game. But here's the reality. He's going to run fast, Thor. That's what Isaiah Bond does. But when you're talking about all of the things that are required to be a successful wide receiver at the next level, he's not going to play a boundary. He's not playing on the outside, and he has not shown the competency on the inside to run those two-way routes from the slot. He's a speed guy. Is he Trey Tucker right now? Is he a Trey Tucker type player right now? I just think at wide receiver 5, you're setting the expectations way too high for this kid.
Yeah, and Steve Sarkisian thought he was going to be Xavier Worthy. That's what Steve Sarkisian pitched last year in the transfer portal around this time to Isaiah Bond. Worthy was going to the NFL, and it was like, step in here. Bond had been at Alabama prior to that. Sarkisian was like, you can be my new Xavier Worthy, and Texas did not get that this past year. Isaiah Bond only had 17 catches, 220 yards, 1 touchdown. And Ray, some of the advanced metrics are real bad. And this isn't even an advanced one, but yards per route run against man coverage last year, 0.52 for Isaiah Bond. Like, bro, you're supposed to be an athletic freak. Yeah, well, like what is going on? He had a couple drops despite having the lower targets. He doesn't catch in the contested situations. He needs to be open. Isaiah Bond does. So it's like, to your point, it's like, yeah, like last year, again, he wasn't on the field all the time. He was dinged up. And then this is another reason that I was shocked that he declared at the end of the season after he came back healthy. This is when Texas was in their run in the college football playoff and down the stretch. Isaiah Bond wasn't started. He was splitting time with Wingo and the kid they got from Oregon State, Bolden. Like, it was not, and it's like, now you're going to early declare. I agree with you, Ray. Bond is going to put on a show at the combine, but what we saw, especially this year, I would not be able to touch him on day 2. Now, if it falls into day 3, okay. In a bad receiving class, sure, I can shoot a shot on an athletic profile, and he's shown flashes, right? We just have not seen them coalesce, to your point, into something where we can be like, oh, this is what this guy is going to be year 1 in the NFL. I think what he has shown is year 1 of the NFL, he will be affixed to the bench. Maybe he can, kick return and come in every now and again. Injury insurance, he shouldn't be playing as a rookie. His game is not there yet. I'm totally with you, Ray. Yeah, my overrated receiver staying in the state of Texas, TCU's Savion Williams. Now, this kind of hurts my heart because I love players like this, and I'm almost learning from my mistakes or fighting myself on this, because this is the player type that in the past, earlier in my days of NFL draft work, I always super overrated this guy. So we'll see if this time I end up getting it right. But Savion Williams, someone asked me on Twitter like a month and a half or 2 months ago, like my take on Savion Williams. And I said, Savion Williams is what would happen if Cordero Patterson and Laviska Shenault had a love child. That's all you need to know about him. That's what he is. He's super big. He's super athletic. He's super twitchy. He has long speed. Fabulous athlete. And with the ball in his hands, he can do all kinds of stuff. He's dangerous. The problem is he doesn't have any ball skills, right? It was like when Cordero Patterson came in. Of course, I recall this because I'm coming to you live from Minneapolis right now, diehard Viking fan. They were trying to teach him the whole time how to play receiver. They finally just sort of gave up on it, right? Like, and Cordero eventually found his destiny of being like sort of the utility guy on offense, running back, you'd manufacture touches for him on the outside and then kick returning, right? We'll get the ball in his hands that way, but he couldn't run the routes and didn't necessarily have the ball skill down the field. Savion Williams, he is going to have to be taught to be a receiver. He is not a receiver right now. People that are claiming that he is, you haven't watched his tape. He is a manufactured touch guy. Any idea of like, oh, this is what he could be down the road? If that involves catching the ball way down the field, you are doing a projection, I would argue a logical leap, right? We haven't seen it. So that's what's going to have to be taught to him. Up until then, you're talking about a special teamer and probably a good one. You're talking about a guy for an offense where, again, you manufacture the touches for him. Out in the slot, maybe big slot kind of a guy, manufacture his touches out there within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, a lot of them behind it. Bring him into the backfield. You can do the end around stuff with him. He's good with the Wildcat stuff. But that's, for me, this is a very limited utility type wide receiver. And for him to be ranked as he was top 10 on that consensus board, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was up there way high. Yeah, 8. It's way too high. Even in a down receiver class, I'm out if that is what the price point is. Where are you at on Savion Williams, Ray?
Yeah, this is you and me. And this is not for the show. We are in lockstep because he is the type of receiver that I would have gravitated to a couple of years ago. The Rondale Moores, the positionless athletes, right? But here's the thing, Thor. You cannot do that at the next level. Savion Williams isn't a better athlete than Micah Parsons. He's not going to get around Jalen Ramsey on the edge. He's not shedding off Myles Garrett. Like, you cannot out-athlete people in the NFL. And what they're also not going to do is take 2 years to develop a third-round wide receiver. It's not going to happen. Either you're competent and ready to go and show something immediately, or we've seen this story play out time and time again. And I'm not even trying to helmet scout Josh Doxson, Jalen Reagor, Savion Williams, Quentin Johnston. If I'm going to take a TCU wide receiver, give me Jack Besh, who's rated like 10 spots lower than Savion Williams, who's actually played proficient, competent levels of the wide receiver position. I am with you. This one, again, 2-3 years ago, just wait until the right teams draft Savion and you're going to have a stud. Well, you know what? Things that have to be dependent on the right team and the right OC and the right, like it's just too many stars that have to align. He's not ready yet. Wide receiver 8 is just too high.
Well said. Yeah, Jack Bech should be ranked as high above him as he is, as Williams is above Bech in this current thing. That should just be totally flipped. And it's funny, you know, like the horror story that has been TCU wide receivers going to the NFL. You have that, and then you also have the deeply scary Cordero, LaVisca, and Rondale Moore. You know, that sort of a profile. And you have them in one player. So I'm fascinated to see the way that this plays out, especially when he goes nuts at the NFL Combine next week. Like, are people going to lose their minds about him and just totally forget the rest of his evaluation and his tape? Like, what do you think, Ray? You think people get out over his skis after he goes nuts in Indy?
I mean, if he's 6'4", 220 pounds, he's a 4.4 or lower. He's going to have a 40-inch vertical jump. I think people will tell themselves that story that this is an athletic freak, but I just caution you against that because, again, we've seen this story play out time and time again. These positionless athletes really struggle, and a lot of people, Thor, like to point to Deebo Samuel as the best case outcome. You look at Deebo, he's not the most refined wide receiver, and those situations are so few and far between. And once that ability to be that Cordero that Deebo wears off, what do you have left? I just caution people against the big blow up that's probably going to happen next week.
Yeah, I mean that's where I'm at, and it's something where you can't count it twice. We expect him to be a physical freak, right? If he's not, we got problems, right? Like he needs to match our expectations on that. I don't know if he could exceed them because I expect him to be a freak of an athlete. Right? I mean, like, that's not what this is about. That's a physical ability thing. What I'm talking about is skills. He can't create separation on a route from the boundary. He struggles to make catches at the catch point. Route breaks aren't great. He just doesn't have a great idea of what he's doing with that stuff. Once the ball is in his hands, everything is solved and the picture clears up. But the rest of it is an issue. You're looking at a guy who's going to have a minuscule ADOT at the start of his NFL career, and he's going to have to show enough to get the development all the way out. You know, like you're mentioning, like teams lack patience these days. Ray, let's go to our most underrated wide receivers. The guy that you had, Ray, I love that you picked him. I'm super intrigued by him. I'm just going to let you start, and then I actually have a question on this guy. But tell the people who your underrated wide receiver was.
Yeah, LeJontay Wester, wide receiver out of Colorado. He is wide receiver 46 on the media consensus big board. Unbelievable. Unreal. I mean, just the fact that he did get the invite to the Shrine Bowl, so he should just be higher off of that. But when you're talking about slot wide receivers in this class, he played 90.8% of his snaps from the slot. Luther Burden, 80%. Xavier Restrepo, 88% from the snap, and then Tez Johnson, 72%. His EPA per pass attempt, higher than all of them. Tez Johnson doubled up Luther Burden. Talking about yards per target for Luther Burden, 8.4, 10.5 for LeJontay Wester. Success rate over 60%. Catch rate over expected. Did he do more than the Colorado offense gave him the opportunity to do? Higher than Luther Burden, Xavier Restrepo, and Tez Johnson. You're talking about a player whose quick twitch ability, his ability to work after the catch. This is a guy that, I kid you not, Thor, I don't want to speak too crazy here. I think there's a real world shot where this guy is a team's third, fourth wide receiver out the gate, and I don't care where he's drafted. FAU, you probably know about that team more than me, but he had 1,100 yards last year, back-to-back 700-yard seasons prior to that. He's experienced. I think LeJontay Wester definitely deserves to be much, much higher than wide receiver 46. This is crazy to me.
I agree with all that, and yet that FAU team, they couldn't throw the ball whatsoever, and Wester was doing his thing. He's just a little bolt of lightning out there, right? I mean, like, this is Wester at his price point, I would so much rather have than Williams at his. They're guys that you're getting the touches to within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, but they're going to have vastly different price points. Wester might have a better career, right? Like, I trust him running the routes more than than Savion Williams. It's different. They're in different physical packages, yada yada. But I like Wester as that. I don't know if you'd seen this, Ray. They listed him initially as a running back at the Shrine Game. Now he was doing a bunch of receiver stuff, but like they were also getting him work at other positions. So I think you could get some of that sort of like move utility, like we're talking about Savion. Again, very, very different physical packages. But my underrated wide receiver rate is Jalen Noel. I won't spend too much time on this because I talked about him. Well, I couldn't stop talking about him when we were down in Mobile. But Jalen Noel on the consensus rankings was way down there. I'm going to have to pull it back up. Was way, way, way down there. Whereas for me, this is a potential top 10 wide receiver in this class. He's slot confined, and that's why he's a little bit underrated. I think people are still sleeping on him. Nobody could stay with him in Mobile in the one-on-ones. They had all kinds of issues with that. He was one of the Jalen Noel was one of the big winners that we had this year at the Senior Bowl, and I think he's going to start for a long, long time in the NFL. I think you're looking at a day two guy. It's reminiscent of Shakir didn't go in day two, but there's similarities in the game. He should have gone on day two. Roman Wilson last year at the Senior Bowl, I saw some similarities between guys like that. So Jalen Noel, my underrated wide receiver. And Ray, we figured for the tight end position, we would just sort of meld them together. We didn't have as big of a list, and you and I happen to agree on both the overrated and the underrated tight end. We'll start off with the overrated, which is Clemson's Jake Bringingstool. Now, Ray, I'm going to tell you this. I have a lot of exposure on Bringingstool in the moment because I happened to own him on my 50-team college fantasy football league team last year. So I watched a lot of Clemson when, and I was, of course, rooting for them to just throw the ball to Bringingstool. Let me tell you my scouting report on Bringingstool. He's tall. That's about it. He's tall. He doesn't block. And so you can't really put him in line. He's going to have to be like the big slot kind of a guy, but he's not explosive. He is reliable within 6 yards, 8 yards of the line of scrimmage. The body's not the exact same, but the evaluation and how I see them and how they were used in college reminds me a bit of Will Mallory a couple years ago, where people were starting to go nuts about Will Mallory. And it's like, I've seen Will Mallory's work. I served with Will Mallory. Will Mallory was a friend of mine, and he is not going to be a starting NFL tight end. That's how I feel about Jake Bringingstool. It's like at best he'd be like a fourth option on a concept, and maybe you could toss him, toss the ball, get it up higher. But he struggles down the field as well, and I'm struggling to find positives in the evaluation. Ray, do you see? How do you see him?
I'll be brief. I'm with you. He's a big target. He's got long arms, and when the ball hits his hands, he will catch it. I think he's got sticky hands. What concerned me the entire time in Mobile was I didn't know if the guy was jogging or running in mud. He is very slow. There's no explosion there in Bringingstool at all. He made a great contested catch in traffic, but just that level of juice and speed, and we're going to talk about one of those players with juice and speed at the tight end position here in a second. He just doesn't possess it. So there's no way he should be tight end 5. He's got good hands, but not tight end 5. No.
His Senior Bowl reminded me a lot of a tight end that our mutual friend Derek Brown comped him to, and I'm stealing D-Bro's comp on this. Cole Turner. There is a little. Cole Turner, I thought, was a little bit better in college in that he could win downfield, but there are some similarities there. Maybe he's poor man's Cole Turner.
Okay, that's not good either. That's not good. But let's talk. Get us with the underrated one, because we'll have some fun on that one.
Yeah, so we'll go to Elijah Arroyo here, who is wait, is he lower than Bringingstool on that consensus board? Like
he's 11. It's utterly ridiculous.
11.
He's 11.
11. Elijah Arroyo 11. I'll let you kick this one off, Ray. Tell the media why they're wrong on the ranking of Elijah Arroyo.
6'4.5", 250, and if you were to just walk into the stadium in Mobile, Alabama, and saw the one-on-ones, you would have thought number 80 played wide receiver. You would have thought he was a wide receiver. 6'4.5", 250, fluidity, breakaway speed. He's been clocked at close to 22 miles per hour. And that Miami history of tight ends, the tight ends that they've put in the NFL, even the ones that didn't become elite, you're talking about the Chris Herndons of the world, Clyde Walfers, Jeremy Shockey, Kellen Winslow Jr., Bubba Franks. The Miami tight end list goes on and on and on. Greg Olsen. We've got another one. Arroyo is going to crush the combine, Thor. Crush it.
He is, yeah. He was moving around so well. And Ray, like the question I had about him coming in was, they had the prolific passing offense at Miami this year, but he wasn't used as much as you would have thought. You saw on the film how well he moves, and it's like, why doesn't he get more acclimated here? So I needed to see him dominate those one-on-ones and in the team drills. He absolutely obliged. The short stuff, the intermediate stuff was consistently getting separation and then completing the plays. And then he was mossing people downfield over and over again. The red zone stuff. There was a touchdown he had on the Thursday, the last day of practices, which he punctuated by punting the ball, I think, out of the stadium. Like, and at that point, it was like, okay, he probably just deserved that because he went absolutely nuts and made so much money there. Ray, if you were to ballpark where Elijah Arroyo goes in April, probably the last Friday night of April, what round do you think he goes? What sort of range there?
I think he's going to be a top 50 pick. I think when it's all said and done, wow. I do not believe a tight end of that caliber, that fluidity and the pedigree that Miami has, I don't think he leaves round 2. I think he is going to be a top 50 pick, late round 2 at the absolute latest.
Yeah, and Arroyo too, he played some inline, last year. It was almost he played almost 40% of snaps inline. Now he's going to be a big slot at the next level, but he is a big kid. And the difference between him and a guy like Bringingstool is for the slot, Elijah Arroyo can win downfield all day, right? I mean, he's got the athleticism to get there. He can get off the line, and he's got great ball skills. So Elijah Arroyo, stock way up, and it's going to continue to go way up here starting next week at the NFL Combine, where both Ray and I expect him to go absolutely ballistic. Ray Garvin, I could talk to you all day long about NFL draft prospects. Unfortunately, we have to roll for the day. Tell the people where they can find your work and what you're working on now.
Ray GQ, social media, YouTube, draft content all day, all the time. Appreciate you having me on. Just search Ray GQ and you'll find me.
And that's all the time that we have for today. I've been your host, Thor Nystrom. Thanks again to Ray Garvin for our underrated, overrated NFL Draft Prospect Show. We will be back next week from Indianapolis at the NFL Combine. Until then, we'll see you then.